Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm Paul Elam with a voice for men and an ear for men. And tonight I'm having this special sit down. If you'll notice, I'm not in my normal digs. I'm staying with a friend while on vacation. So, what you may be wondering, would I be doing a podcast for while I'm on vacation? That's a really good question. Um, and it involves ICMI, my favorite thing in the whole wide world to go to. And it's coming up again in Chicago this August, the 16th, 17th, and 18th, I believe. And Alison will shake her head at me sternly if I got that wrong.
No,
Um,
you got it right. I
oh,
just wanted to
wonderful.
interject a moment and say the International Conference on Men's Issues, because I know sometimes people can be confused by acronyms, because it just,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, they can. I just assume everybody, and if you don't know what ICMI means, we need to have a talk. And I guess that's what we're doing too. So, what
Yes.
possessed you of all things in the world for the average woman to do in postmodern society is to host a conference challenging the feminist line and feminist orthodoxy and promoting sensitivity toward probably the most viled group in human history? Why, Alison? Why?
Oh, that's a pretty long question. Um, do you want the long story or the short version?
We got time.
All right. Well, the story that I tell everyone, at least the media when they ask me, because they do often ask this question, is in 2000 or sorry 1993 I went to an all-girls school, and when I came back I was pretty radicalized into feminism, and my mother was concerned about it, so she gave me a book called The Princess by the Window. And I read the book, and it was the first time I had ever been exposed to men's issues. And I just, for whatever reason, I found the subject fascinating. So my introduction was when I was 16, and I just kept reading more and more and more about it. And when I went to college, I ended up finding more books on the subject in our college library by William Farrell and Lionel Tiger and other people who had talked about men and men's issues. And I just found the subject so, it was so different from everything else that I was hearing in university and everywhere, that I just found it really compelling. I've always been sort of the kind of person who's been attracted to knowledge that wasn't necessarily con- knowledge that resonated with me, but didn't necessarily resonate with other people or the mainstream.
Right.
And it just, something about it resonated with me, and that's sort of the how. The why took me a bit longer to figure out, and that's quite the journey. Because the how is, my mother gave me this book, I read it, I got interested, but why would someone, a woman, stick with this for 1993 to 2019, which is almost 30 years, or no, almost 25 years, I think 24 years. Um, and the why, like I said, it took me a really long time to figure it out. And I actually had um, sort of a difficult time last August. I think you know the story of that, right, Paul?
Yes, I
Um,
do.
if, for those people who don't know, I went to the Calgary Expo. I'm a graphic artist, and I was selling my comic, and I went to a panel called the Women into Comics panel. And I didn't realize when I went to it that it was a feminist panel, but the feminists at the front started talking about men's rights activists. So I said, would you like me to speak to that topic as a men's rights activist? Because they were conjecturing about men's rights opinions on women in geek and gamer spaces. And of course they were getting it wrong. So I got up and I said, the reason why we don't like you in charge of these spaces is because you present women as victims and you never talk about the situation for men. And that's bad, because we need to bring men into the picture. And we also need to challenge the notion that women are defined by being victims. And because I said that, they decided to accuse me of harassment. Well,
Of
they didn't.
course.
No one on the panel actually takes responsibility for accusing me of harassment. They just floated the idea that what I did was harassment with the convention staff. And then I got kicked out because the operations manager on the stand said that he thought I was a danger to the public, along with all of the people from Honey Badger Radio who had come to help me promote Honey Badger Radio and my comic. And So essentially, a bunch of mean girls didn't like me in their space and decided to kick me out because I challenged what they said about men's rights activists publicly. Oh, and what was really hilarious is they started this by saying, "Why can't we have a conversation?"
Of course.
Of course.
And then they demonstrated why we can't have a
And then
conversation.
they demonstrated why we can't have a conversation. And the final bottom line was that the convention actually took unlawful action in evicting me against their own contract. So what they did was they punished me in an unlawful way. I'm not going to say criminal, but it's against the law what they did to punish me for having spoken up against feminists by breaking their contract. So I took them to court, and last August, the judge ruled against us in defiance of contract law, because Alberta civil courts, you're supposed to interpret contract law based on the layman's standard, and they were supposed to, according to contract, investigate the incident. They never spoke to me. The feminists accused me, floated the accusation of harassment. I was kicked out the next morning, and they never spoke to me. The decision to kick me out never involved any kind of discussion with me or interview with me. And most human beings on the planet, I mean, you've seen so many police procedurals, and they all have, during the investigation, they talk to the alleged suspect. So the idea of interviewing both sides is so critical to everyone's understanding of investigation that this judgment was absolutely ridiculous, because they even admitted they violated their contract, and they did violate their contract. And the judge said, well, they had the right to do that because reasons. He never really gave a clear reason.
Because potato.
Because I don't know. My wife didn't make my Weetabix this morning. Something, who knows? But it's just patently ridiculous. But at the time, I was really devastated by the judgment. And part of the reason why was because I felt completely useless to the men's rights community. Because here I was advocating for men's rights in public, subject to an unlawful punishment. I brought this to trial, and it was upheld that they can do these unlawful punishments against anybody who's advocating publicly on the men's rights position. And I just felt like I had failed. I felt like a complete failure. I had a really bad time of it at that point. I did attempt. I hate saying this, it's really embarrassing, but I did attempt suicide. My husband actually found me and talked me out of it, and it was going through that process and then talking to young men who had also been suicidal that I realized that there are two really essential components to coping with mental health issues. And one is to feel like you matter to the people around you, which we are really failing young men at in our society, because we don't give young men any sense that society has their back at all. Like, we're always condemning them. We're always shaming them. We're always blaming them for social ills. We're giving them no sense that they're going to have a soft place to land if they have any troubles at all. And then we condemn them for sucking it all up and sucking it all in and being stoic, and it's just, but so I've talked to young men about this stuff, and I found out that the two coping skills, one is knowing that you matter to the people around you and your society. And two is having an external standard to live up to build yourself towards. And the reason for that is because when you have an external standard, you can develop the sense that you're moving towards something through your own actions. So you develop a sense that you have efficacy, like you have a presence in the world, which is very important to your mental health, because if you get in a bad spot, you still feel like you can make a change to make it more positive. And yeah. And so it's these two components that come together that create, I think, good mental health coping strategies or coping skills. And when that happened to me, Canada essentially said, you don't matter as a citizen, although I still have to pay taxes. People can make apply these unlawful punishments to you, and we're not going to uphold your contract rights. We're in fact going to uphold their right to do that because you're a men's rights activist. And then I felt completely useless, like I had failed. And it was those two components that it essentially happened all at once. And having gone through that process, I understood more about what was happening with young men who had committed suicide. I don't mean so arrogant to say that I completely understand it, but I think I understood, I could relate a lot more. And what's happening is they're losing their sense that they matter. For example, they lose a relationship or they lose a job, in relationships in particular, at the same time as they lose what they've been told all their lives is their method of coping, which is to benefit a woman or their boss or society. And they lose that at the same time as they lose their sense of self, because it really is a man's identity to be useful to something. And I call it the triple threat. The triple threat hits, and these young men who go through it, they have no history of mental illness. They just crater and kill themselves. And from all of that, I realized that men's rights activism had been that aspect, that there's two aspects of coping. It had been that external standard that you live up to and you take responsibility for as a woman, because some men's rights activists have come to me and told me that I have an ability that men don't necessarily have to advocate for men's rights. So in having that ability, I had a responsibility, because men aren't able to advocate for their own interests in the same way that women can. So I have a responsibility to provide that for men, to be of service to men, for men in that way. And that was my external standard that I lived up to. And that cratered on me when the judgment came back. And I realized that I wasn't really of use because I couldn't defend my own rights as a woman to advocate for men's issues. So how could I defend men when they do? And so I lived through that, and then that sort of made me realize, when I had to go through that process of introspection, that men's rights has really provided me that external standard and that sense of responsibility that I have to live up to, which has in turn enabled me to overcome some pretty significant mental health challenges that I've had in the past. And that's the long story as to why.
Well, there's got to be a little more. I'm going to press you harder.
Okay.
There is, for you to take on an ICMI, which is, I mean, I've been there, done that. For the people that think it's a joyride to put on a conference, I've got some real abrupt news for you. Putting on one of these things is hell on the people running it. I know for a fact. I'm so relieved that I'm not a part of having to be a part of that this year, that the weight is on somebody else's shoulders. But I tell you, you got to have some kind of passion for this, Alison, or you wouldn't take this on. This is a big risk. People should know putting on these conferences is a roll of the dice that you can pay consequences for. And we have that every time we have a conference. It's really white knuckle stuff sometimes. So how are you handling that?
One day at a time. Because of my experiences with anxiety, I've had to learn, and I'm not always very good at this, but I've had to learn, how when they say if you're walking someplace high, don't look down, just look where you're going. I've had to learn that because of my history with anxiety. Don't look down, just look at your goal. And I've had to practice a lot of that with the ICMI, because as soon as I look down and I start thinking about all of the tasks that I have to do, it's overwhelming. But I try to every day just say, okay, what's the next task? What's the next task? What's the next task? And then just knock them down one after another. So yeah, it's I'm holding up. It's extremely stressful. I'm doing the best I can. And I have lots of people helping out as well. So it's not just me. It's a whole bunch of other people. I got Karen helping with promotion. Brian's helping with local work. Tom is doing the videography. He's done the videography for, I think, every single ICMI except for the first one.
That's quite right.
Yeah, exactly. And then I got Jay, who's our web and app master. I've got Andrew, who's sort of like the like a data marshal. He just marshals the data. And Brian's wife Lindsay is also helping me with some organizing the floating data involved with the conference. And then I have a new person that I met this year called Grace, out of Chicago, who's helping me with staging. And I'm also going to have her as my assistant during the convention as well. And then Tim Golditch actually stepped up and brought us a lot of volunteer labor. So he's going to have greeters. Yeah, yeah. And Alan Franzen also helped us up to find some young men from his boxing club to be ushers. And let's see what else. Frazier is our designer. He has done the bulk of the work on the program book that we're putting together. And yeah, I've worked with him for probably 3 years, and he does great work, and he works hard in a volunteer position. And then we got some other Mike J, who's going to be hosting like our game night. Mike S, Dr. Randomer Cam, is going to be doing some comedy stuff and helping me out with. I'm going to attempt to put on an exhibit, but I don't know if it's going to happen. But we'll see. That's my because I'm an installation artist, so I want to do something really cool with installations and men's issues. So I think I got everybody. I know I probably missed somebody. Ed, our illustrator, who's done a lot of. If you go to the website and you see the illustration work, that's Ed, and Ed Oscar.
We love Ed.
Yeah,
his stuff
he does. Yeah, he does amazing work. And oh right, our AV team, Valerie and Troy. They're going to be a huge help. They were originally going to pitch for Minneapolis, but then they ended up contributing to Chicago. And they run a station out of Minneapolis, I think a PBS station, they're
public access.
Public access. So they're going to be bringing all kinds of equipment and stuff like that to help us out. So I would also say the Sheraton. Oh my God. Oh shit. The venue team. Oh God. Oh my God. Oh shoot.
You heard it here first, folks.
Oh my God. No, that's just one of that's or maybe it's the Hilton, who knows, Their venue team has been really great as well. So that's been great to work with them too. All right, so maybe another question.
What I've noticed, I follow the website and the new developments. I'm on there every couple of days for as long as I can almost remember now, checking out progress. You've got a lot of higher profile speakers coming in, and there seems to be a lot of focus to apply this not just in the realm of men's issues, but also to engage more open dialogue in the exchange of ideas in a lot of ways in the culture wars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. We're definitely trying to open it up, because I actually am firmly of the opinion that a lot of the issues that we see in the greater culture are a result of ignoring men's issues and basically ignoring the point of view of men, because it's like when we have a problem, we sort of use men as social duct tape to try to erase the problem. And as a result of that, we never actually deal with the underlying problem. We just apply more duct tape to it, create more men's issues, ignore the problem until it just breaks and it just doesn't work anymore. And if we had actually started to deal with the problem before constructing this giant edifice of duct tape, we probably would have been better off. And we're better off the instant we stop saying, okay, we can't sacrifice men anymore. That's not acceptable. We need to deal with the underlying problem. The instant we start to do that, we start to see positive change and positive development towards something better and towards fixing the problem. And I think a lot of what the culture, like the more culture war commentators are seeing, are the symptoms of that. The symptoms of not just the underlying problem, but the symptoms of using men to paper over them. Is I think what's ultimately happening is, by doing what we're doing, we're decreasing the sense of cooperation between men, So the sense of a shared purpose or a sense of shared identity, and increasing the sense of conflict. And eventually something's going to break. So they'll point to the other side being so aggressive and violent, and one side will point to the other side and say they're doing this. But overall, what's the problem is that everybody's increasing in conflict, and everybody's increasing in conflict because there's this breakdown in the cooperative sense of shared identity of men in the West, in my opinion, and it's only going to get worse. And I would also hazard that, and I've said this before, that I think women have a huge role to play. When you see conflict between men, often there's a woman at the root of it. They have a huge role in play in inciting conflict between men, but also potentially resolving it and removing it. It's both ways. You can't be able to create conflict without also being able to reduce it. So I would say women have a huge role in this. This is something that took me a long time to get used to or to accept, because I spent a lot of time sort of wanting men to be the ones to fix it all, to be the ones, to either walk away from it or just somehow be able to change women. I'm not that they shouldn't, establish the boundaries and say, you should be, be the external standard for women. But there was one guy who commented to me long ago, and he said, okay, so once again, it's men who need to do the work. And I really thought about that for a long time. And I realized, no, actually, this is work that women need to do. And if we don't do it, we're going to lose everything that we have. And it's not going to be pretty, and nobody's going to win.
And it's not looking good along those lines.
No, it's not. Well, I would say yes. But I think also, I'm not actually sure the exact number of women who have to start to think along these lines and start to realize that they need to step up to the plate, and they need to start seeing how they contribute in a massive way to destructive attitudes, to conflict between men, to this very toxic atmosphere we see today. And I'm not actually sure how many women need to do it, because it may not really need to be that many. And if it's like a reasonable number, like maybe 148 or something, I think that's entirely doable. And the reason why I think it might be a reasonable number is because if you think about it, technology is scaling all kinds of things, and whatever quality it is that women do that keeps society from imploding, maybe they can scale up that quality from a fewer number of women. The rest of the women don't have to be part of it at all. They can continue to be worker drones, and believe
Which
in
was
feminism.
The plan all along.
Yeah, probably. But
well, that's my 2 cents worth on it. Tell me, Alison, what is obviously the International Conference on Men's Issues, doing one, has become important to you. What do you hope to come out of these things, or even collectively, the series of conferences? What do you think the results are for this that may be helping us change the narrative?
If I can digress from that question and get back to it, just something occurred to me that maybe this is sort of a take that at the Calgary Expo. You kicked me out of your conference, so take that. I'm going to organize one that you can't kick me out of. But this is what do I hope to see? I hope it gets bigger, and I hope it starts to build more momentum. I would like to see a convention in a physical convention in a location, and then start to have satellite remote conventions all around the world, in conjunction with that physical convention. Something like that would be really cool. And I'd like to see the community become more connected. And I think that's really what ICMIs are good for. To realize that we have a larger community, that we have more support, that we come together and support each other, and we show the world that it can be done, that we can be motivated, that it's possible to be motivated by something other than exclusive female victimhood, which is in my opinion, it's what's causing everything to go south is this idea that we can only be motivated by women and women in distress. And then we have to hide the situation for men, because if we show the situation for men, people stop caring. And I call that the negative sum game, which the negative sum game means if there's an issue and we see that 50 women are victims of the issue, we care. We add 50 men to the issue. We don't just like double how much we care or split it between the men and women. We just stop caring about everyone, including the women, and just throw it out. It's that negative sum game, and the fact that we can't seem to be able to get over that. It's that literally is causing society to embrace what is in effect a suicidal narrative, which is society hates women. Like, I mean, how far do you think you're going to go with that? Every institution in society is saying society hates women. Well, you're saying that society hates the group of people that most men get up in the morning, go to their job, work 12 hours, get hernias and heart attacks and strokes and ulcers and cancer for. You're saying that society hates women. Well, how long do you think men are going to continue to contribute to society thinking it hates them or it hates women? You know, that is basically a society that said, you know what, I want to die. This is what I'm going to use. This is the bullet that I'm going to load in my gun and blow my brains out with. And the reason why it's doing it, it'll work. And the reason why it's doing it is because it can't. I'm of the opinion it simply can't actually motivate itself with anything but. And when you're motivated solely by the exclusive victimhood of women, eventually you get to the point. Eventually you step through and you get to the point, well, it must be society itself that hates women, because you need bigger and bigger things to save women from, and there's nothing bigger than society. So eventually you get to that point, you load the bullet in your gun and you shoot yourself. And it's the fact that we can't motivate ourselves, that we lose that motivation once we see male victims. That's the problem. Now, I'm of the opinion that people generally don't do things out of malice, just lack of creativity and laziness. So I think that most people are going along this trajectory of solely being motivated by women being victims because they just don't know any other way. And unfortunately, that particular wind is blowing them over a cliff and it's going to send them a very bad place. But they don't know how to not be motivated by that. They just can't. And I think the ICMI demonstrates that you can. You can actually care about men's issues. You can come together. You can create a very big event, and people will come to it. They will spend money on it, and that's actually sort of important, because if you can't get to the point where people are willing to put forth their own effort, their own resources in significant numbers, then we can't change the tide. And we need an alternative to exclusive female victimhood. We need an alternative to that traditional fuels of society, fossil fuels.
Oh yeah, we could go into that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I'm making the analogy that being running on exclusive female victimhood is like running on dinosaurs, fossil fuels, the dinosaur part of your brain, basically. And if we can't get off of that, then we're going to implode our entire society. And
that would seem to put the onus on men
to get off of.
And that's sort of where I totally understand the perspective on what happens when we see men as victims. But if men don't understand that they can be victims, I mean, that's the fundamental problem. And I don't see women as a whole ever rescuing men from that burdensome set of expectations around his role with women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like I said, I'm not sure, like, considering the technology that's coming out and how it can amplify social interaction. And I know this is a little bit more rarefied and maybe people can't follow it, but it may not be that you need every single woman to buy into this, because every single woman is sort of, like most women are average. They're just doing their thing. Maybe you just need a critical mass, and that critical mass can be significantly less than, 100%. Maybe it could be 1%, 1% of 1%. And with the ability to scale social interactions that the internet and new technologies like AI are creating, maybe you just need that few women who do care about men, and then scale that up somehow, and they can fill in
Well,
those
that
gaps.
and hopefully a combination of men who have found their inner Sir Galahad and cut his freaking head off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that I think is really important for men to do in this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I love about the conference. They are mostly men in
Mm-hmm.
attendance there. And there they are in an environment where they can have this kind of discussion without looking over their shoulder. And that's always been a big plus about these conferences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Um, and to be able to create, well, I mean, and I know that it can be fraught for a woman to arrange a conference like that, like this.
Oh
Um,
yeah. I've
to
seen fringers out there going wild over this. I find it quite humorous.
Yeah, I'm sure. The thing is that I'm not trying to organize this to change, to stifle men's anger or their expression of their concern over their role. I will express my observations, and I'll accept criticism of that, or conversation or discussion of that. And I'm not going there to bring my, oh, you can't do that, oh, your finger wagging and stuff like that. Um, I actually really want to make a space where men can talk about these issues without fear of being condemned or criticized. Um, and what I've realized, okay, I'll use an anecdote. This is actually pretty hilarious. So on one of our Honey Badger radio streams, and for those of you who don't know, I founded Honey Badger Radio with Karen Strawn and Hannah Wallen, and we were three women who talked about men's issues in the context of not going to men and saying, okay, you have to conform yourselves to us and to our sensibilities, but to talk really honestly about them, and just listen, and not be constantly concerned with our own well-being, as it were, which I see a lot of women are. And in one stream, I don't remember which one, there was this woman who swanned into our stream, and she started talking crap, talking shit about how this was an unsafe space for women. And I said to her, how dare you come into a space, because I'm speaking her language now, how dare you come into a space built by women and say it's unsafe for women? How dare you do that? What are you doing here? Are you saying we're not women? In which case you're misgendering us? Or what are you saying? What are you trying to say? And after we went back, actually, what was great was within a couple sentences, she was just totally cowed, and then she disappeared. And that's the thing. That's something that we can do, is be like, well, no, Honey Badger Radio was a space founded by women. You come in here and you say you're uncomfortable as a woman? Too bad. So sad. Because you don't even have the right to that feeling, because it was founded by women. Because are you going to say, you're now speaking for us? No, you're not. And then she just scurried off, because I guess her shtick wasn't working. Might have worked somewhere else, but not there. And that's the kind of thing that I'd like to see, is just, this is a space, we've in some ways we built this ICMI space, me, Karen, and the rest of the female volunteers. A woman comes in and says, well, this space is uncomfortable for me as a woman. Well, too bad. You don't get to say that anymore, because you're not the gatekeepers of this space. And the thing is that I know I want to see men be able to say their truth and be able to be vulnerable, or express their issues, and know somebody has their back, and know somebody's going to kick out the blue nosers. Um, and I want want that, because it actually really bothers me, the idea that men are being silenced by this culture, or being silenced by women. I hate that. It's just the
Well,
worst thing
men
in
have
the
always
world
been
is,
silenced by women.
yeah,
I
I
think
know.
one of the big mythologies that we um, sometimes cater to in the men's movement is the idea that the silencing began with social media platforms. Um, and
They should talk to
no,
men's rights activists from the 80s.
yes, exactly. You know, when men are walking on eggshells in their own homes, um, they aren't exactly empowered. And that's the way a lot of men lived before feminism.
Hmm.
We've always made the mistake of refusing to recognize women's power in this
Hmm.
world and whistling and looking the other way when it's exercised under our noses. um, but I think you're right. The conferences are a great antidote to that. They're a great place to make friends. Um,
Hmm.
and you never know what's going to happen. I just got a piece of news the couple of days ago that there was a major domestic violence study out of Trinidad and Tobago, and they ended up citing, concluding that gynocentrism was in effect the worst obstacle for men in reporting domestic abuse. This has never happened before. And they
Hmm.
actually cited one of my ICMI speeches from London
Wow.
in 16 for the definition of gynocentrism. You never know. The speakers that come to the ICMIs, you never know what's going to happen with your words. It's really important to speak truth to power.
Hmm.
Uh, this is one of the most critical exercises of freedom, and it's the basics of freedom is speaking truth to power. And it's really good to see these things going off. I really appreciate the fact that you've gone through all this stuff because, like I said, I've been there a couple of times. These are nightmares to
Hmm.
organize these things. They're absolute nightmares from literally from beginning to end. So I'm hoping, I know that below you'll find in the description area, there is a link to buy tickets. First and foremost, the best way that you can support ICMI is to show up in Chicago on the 16th, 17th, and 18th of August. Um, and also, um, if you can't make it, I believe there's live streaming
Hmm.
that
Yep. Yeah.
is
We're this year
going
we're
to
going to
be
be doing.
available.
This year we're going to be doing remote tickets as well. You can, if you go through the, actually you'd have to go to feedthebadger.com, and we're currently doing a fundraiser to get to the shortfall
Link
that this,
below to that. There's already a link below.
yeah, so I'm currently doing a fundraiser to fundraise what I'm projecting. It's not quite a shortfall. It's just like, this is a ticket drive with a goal. So, I want to get a certain amount just so I can cover all of the costs, and that's basically what this drive is for. There are various options. You can get archived live streams. You can get 1 day live stream access, so you can actually watch the events unfold and take part in the Q&A via the live stream chat. And there's a 3 day full conference ticket that gets you all of the live streams for each day, and it will also get you the archived content for all of the stuff that we can't live stream, because there will be significant amount of content where we just can't live stream because we only can do one live stream. And then all of the behind the scenes content that we're going to be producing, plus all the culture war content that won't necessarily end up on the internet. The men's rights content will. The cultural war content will probably be exclusive, so we can, because it's so much bigger, we need to cover way more costs. But so that will all be in the remote ticket, and you can see that at feedthebadger.com. We also have the option to sponsor a volunteer or an attendee in need. So that's for somebody who can maybe get to the conference but can't really pay for it, or our volunteers. I think we got most of our volunteers covered now, but so you can pay for accommodations and other stuff for the volunteer. And the other option is to sponsor a speaker. And I've had quite a few people actually doing that. When you sponsor a speaker, you'll get your name on their badge, sponsored by, so Carl Benjamin, Sergeant of Akkad, sponsored by Paul Elam, if you're okay with that, sponsored by, 'cause somebody's already
Sure.
requested you. Yeah. So and then they get a gift basket to give given to you as a speaker when you get to the convention.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah.
So
Um,
you're doing this in how many hours a day?
uh, I like I said, I have a lot of help, and the fundraiser it's actually doing better than what it looks like. I don't know if you want to throw up a link to that, Brian, or just throw up the image. I know you're there. I think so. I can feel your spirit, I
Yes,
believe.
I am here. What was the question again? What do you want me to do?
Put up an image of the fundraiser.
Oh, yeah, I'll do that. Give me a little bit of time to grab the link and stuff.
Yeah, so it's actually doing better than it was because the first day, um, the plugin wasn't working properly, and I was talking back and forth with the support staff for that plugin, and the individual I was talking for, she finally gave me sort of a workaround that I could use to fix it. But the first couple days, people had to contribute through this "Shut Up and Take My Money" link, and that doesn't actually get applied to the fundraiser. So I've been sort of beating my head on how to apply it properly, but I think I'm just gonna go for it. Maybe tomorrow, do another video and say, okay, I'm gonna apply the amount so you can all see how much this fundraiser has actually earned. So I'm pretty sure it's fairly higher than that. It's quite a bit higher. But yeah. So if
But
you want to help
it's
out,
not like you don't, it's not like you don't need the money.
no, the projected shortfall that I'm projecting is about 20 to 40,000, although it's significantly less because the fundraiser has done well. But yeah, that's what I'm projecting, presuming nothing untoward happens or really bad stuff happens. So there you go. So if you want to contribute to this, and you will get, like, this is not just straight throwing money at something. You are getting some of the fruits of the convention as a result of contributing to the fundraiser. So www.feedthebadger.com, and yeah, help us
Can
out.
you give
Help us
us
put a
a little bit of insight into sort of how the events are going to proceed? Is there going to be full days of speakers, or breakout rooms, that sort of thing?
Well, we for this year we've actually got something a little bit. We got a couple things are unique. We got the program book, but then we also have an app, an event app that we
All
did through
right.
Hoova. Yeah, and the event app is really cool. The way that the agenda is going to proceed is that we're going to have at least two rooms, possibly three in some cases, of content going simultaneously from 9 till 5:45, so just before 6. The last day is going to be cut off a little bit early, but so we're going to have two rooms of content. We may have a third, depending, because I've had some recent interest in some workshops. Um, and with the way the Hoova app is that you can sort of like you can take your tray to the cafeteria, like the buffet, and then just pull in whatever you want and construct your own schedule. So if you get the app, you can just select which ones you want to see, create your own personal schedule, and then go through the entire event like that.
Oh, wow. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
This
So
is definitely, there's going to be a lot of firsts for an ICMI.
yeah, if I, like I don't want to, maybe I'll screw everything up, but who knows? But yeah, there will be a lot of firsts, hopefully. Yeah, I know. The thing is that I got such great staff that I'm sure that this is going to go pretty much flawlessly. Well, I say that. I should not have said that, because then it's it's going to go well, I think. Well, it's going to go well. I don't want to say flawlessly. It's going to go well. Yeah, it'll
I'm
be
sure it
huge.
will.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to this discussion?
Um, I, 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 I'm very honored that you allowed me to do this. You know.
Well, I'm ecstatic that you're putting the conference on. These things are very important events. Anybody that's been to one can tell you that there's something magical in the air at these things. Um, but we really needed to carry it on. And, you know, Mike's done two, I've done two. And it's nice to have somebody competent to take on another one and to bring it back home to the United States.
Yeah. Well, hopefully
Not
I'll
too
be able
far.
to do another one too at some point.
What's that?
I said hopefully, well, maybe we could do I could do another one in some point in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, if you want to support a speaker at the conference, support one of the volunteers, one of the expenses, you have to feed people. We've got people working for free. I say we, I'm talking about Alison and crew. They have people working for free, but they have to feed them. They have to put a roof over their head. They have to be, taken care of while they're there doing all that work. If you want to help with that, if you want to help get a speaker there, or just help generally with the fundraiser, the link is below. Please give something.
Mm-hmm. Every bit
Little
helps.
bit counts.
Yeah, every little bit counts, and every little bit is going to be recognized. So if you give $5, we'll put you in our thank you screen on our app. So every bit
And
helps.
so everybody know, for the sake of full disclosure, ABFM has zero financial investment in the honey badgers or in this conference. This is all on them
Yeah.
to make it work. So they are not on anyone else's purse strings other than their own. So if you might consider that when you want to toss a little something into the tip jar.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we're not paid by Voice for Women. We're a completely distinct organization. And yeah,
always have been, much to the dismay of some people who like rumors.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, like from the beginning we were a separate entity, but I think it's because of your gracious giving us some room in our beginning and a platform, and
Well,
also
yeah, something to say. It was worth it. I'm glad to see the honey badgers where they're at. I'm really thankful to you, Alison, for going through the gymnastics it takes to put on one of these conferences and to ride with the risk and everything else that comes with it. I wish you all the luck with this. I'd like to see you do another one if you're crazy enough. Go for it.
Sure. Well, let's see how this one does. And
let's see how this one
I
does.
think doing it like saying yeah, but maybe in like 3 years, that's a little bit easier than once a year. This is a big thing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Takes half a year's work to get it
Oh
done.
yeah, it does take half a year's work. Oh man, it's so much work. But I'm glad to do it because it's you guys have collectively the men's rights movement has given me it's given me the ability, and it's given me the ability to overcome a lot of stuff in my life. So I feel like you guys have given me a lot by giving me an external standard to live up to. You've given me the motivation to overcome a lot, and that's very precious. So
Red pills are very, very good for you.
yeah, ultimately,
Take
after the
them
purging ends.
Well, like the truth will set you free after it stomps a mud hole in your ass. Then it'll set you free. But that's good. Anyway, thank you, Alison.
No problem.
Good night to everybody. And that's it. Now,
Good night.
good night.
Do you need help?
Yes, stop streaming.